You're watching The Open on BNN Bloomberg. I'm John Ehrlichman. Now, we are looking at a bit of a quiet start to the trading day, but we have been talking about record levels in Toronto and New York. And one of the big questions for investors, the easy one is, will the party continue? Well, for a better look at what some of the derivative action is telling us right now, let's bring in options expert Amy Wu Silverman, head of derivative strategy at RBC Capital Markets. Amy, great to see you as always. Common question, stocks have gone up a lot. Will they continue to go up? When you look at some of the data points right now, what are you seeing?
So that certainly is the question of the day, John. And I would say looking at the option tea leaves, it still kind of looks like the party is going on. You know, one way that we scrape the surface of volatility is to kind of look at the sentiment both from the call side and the put side. And what it has been saying for quite a long time is that the positive momentum will still continue, and it continues to beget more positive momentum.
Is there like a chicken and egg thing here? Like if the market is in rally mode, is it more common to see the derivatives positioning sticking with a bullish bent?
Yeah, that's very interesting because I think it gets down to the heart of the matter, which is what is the market really trading on? And when you think about it from a factor perspective, one thing it's really trading on is momentum, and that tends to cycle upwards until there's some sort of clearing event. Now, one event that we thought would be a clearing event was this Monday's past GTC AI event with NVIDIA. And sort of what did you see happen from that? It was quite positive, but there was also this onslaught of other semis news that kind of came on top of it, and it kind of spurred even more positive momentum, not necessarily in NVIDIA itself, but in a lot of the adjacent names where folks are still looking for that positivity to continue. Is there
an ecosystem around just NVIDIA? Is that what you're saying? Is it its own stock market?
You know, one thing we've been joking about is if NVIDIA was your OG, your Paris Hilton, if you will, then folks are looking for the future Paris adjacent, so the Kim Kardashians of the future. And one thing we've been saying is, you know, what would that be? That would be your Marvell. It would be your, you know, Microns, which had that 17% positive earnings. It's a lot of the names in the SMH that people are saying, okay, maybe NVIDIA has had this amazing run, maybe it has this massive market cap, but what are these adjacent names where we see this party continuing? And I think that's why you continue to see a lot of these semi names having heavily large call buying volume.
Meanwhile, I would suspect that both Kim Kardashian and Paris Hilton are fans of gold. We have been watching the price of gold closely because material stocks here in Canada have been in rally mode. What are the charts telling you about the bullion story right now?
They certainly like their bling, right? So one thing I would say is it's interesting because the commodity story, in particular in gold, has been very strong as well. But I think that's part of a different narrative, which is when you think about options, the left tail, so this demand for downside protection on something like the S&P has really waned to the point where it is non-existent. But there is hedging. You're just seeing it on these other areas like commodities, like gold. And then obviously you've been seeing Bitcoin rally as well, which I find to be a quite interesting separate story. I think a lot of folks are using call spreads and call options in gold to think of more geopolitical hedges, to think of more, you know, other things that could happen on the left tail. They're just expressing it through upside in gold rather than in downside on the index level. But
you're getting at this idea of just like endless government spending. Like we got a budget coming up here in Canada, but you often hear about this story in the U.S. That is reflected in some way, shape, or form in some of these different trading tools.
That's right. And historically, gold call option volume, when you kind of look at it, does tend to be inverted in the sense that there usually is that bid. But what we're seeing is that bid is even stronger when you compare it historically and map it against other times when you've seen that demand. So there is this concern, you know, whether it be geopolitical, whether it just be the amount of debt that is being incurred. But you do see that bid. And I think that the left tail is being expressed here rather than in just the put side of the index market itself right now.
And just a final question, I guess, you know, we're so often we're talking about the Canadian stock market versus the American stock market, and then we slice and dice the the breakdown, and you've highlighted a couple of the key differences, that the tech exposure in Canada is less and the commodity exposure is more. And we were talking earlier with Jack Manley, an equity strategist at JP Morgan, who felt like there was some near-term potential for obviously that commodity story to continue, but longer term he would still be betting on bigger gains, let's say for the S&P 500. I guess it begs the question, when it comes to derivatives activity around things like gold or energy or copper, which are generally seen as cyclical area, is it cyclical as well? Like, does the sentiment shift on a fairly consistent basis in those groups?
I think that's a fantastic question. And, my sense would be, if you actually look underneath the surface of the environment, obviously AI has been the huge story. Everyone kind of knows that narrative. But there has been decent breadth widening. So just meaning, underneath the surface, the equal weighted portion of both the S&P as well as the Canadian market is actually doing quite well now. And that includes the cyclical part of the market. So, the question is, can this continue going forward? I think so. Now, copper is another interesting story. One stock we've been following very closely is First Quantum, where we've seen a lot of call buying and interest in the options market there. And that's much more of a supply demand issue. So that, of course, there are already these inherent supply demand issues within copper. But then outside of that, I think it's this breadth widening in the market that investors are really getting in tune to as well.
And there's just so many moving parts with that story.